This is a short little showcase of my take on the Poison Artillery Ballista Pathfinder. This build was showcased by Zizarin last week, but I wanted to show a bit of its power when you look at it from a bit more of a softcore perspective. This build is completely reliant on the special T5 Crucible node for Artillery Ballista. As you can see here, this allows for its hits to poison despite the type of damage it deals. Normally, only Chaos and physical hits are able to poison, but with this, we are able to poison with all of the fire, lightning, and cold damage that we deal from our bow. Core uniques for this build are essentially only Wilma's Requital, which gives you a massive boost to attack speed due to the amount of cast speed we get from different sources on the tree, which all get converted to attack speed, as well as +1 Ballista from Ancestral Bond. I also opted to use the Perpendicular line enchant instead of the +2 Projectile line enchant due to its flexibility hitting mobile targets, due to its horizontal spread as well, but both this and the +2 Projectile enchant are good. For uniques, I use Dendrobate, but many people use Lightning Coil as well. Dendrobate provides a massive amount of damage, as well as a pseudo 7 link to provide ease of access to poison chance, whereas Lightning Coil provides a similar boost to physical damage survivability instead. Vixens, this is optional, but I would highly recommend either this or Asenaths. This drastically simplifies getting your Despair and Temp chains onto mobs, which are both huge DPSs due to their interactions with poison. I also use Blood Grip due to it being a unique and the ease of access of buying a +1 curse as the implicit on it, and the explicit mod for increased life recovery from Flask, which helps healing from Master Surgeon. You can also opt for a rare neck and use points to allocate Whispers of Doom on the tree directly. There's also a somewhat popular Glass Cannon neck called Warped Timepiece due to how its power interacts with Wilma's, given that you can get 2 very high rolled attack and cast speeds. Now we're going to go through a rapid fire of the important stuff in the build. For projectiles, it's worth noting that realistically 8 projectiles is all you actually need for optimal boss DPS. This build does a lot of damage and can very quickly reach dot cap, so I would highly recommend not over-investing into the number of projectiles you have unnecessarily. You can get up from the base 6 up to 8 with either Master Fletcher and Multi-Shot, which are easily accessible via a large Thread of Hope, or directly you can get it from using a Forbidden Flame and Flesh on Endless Munitions, or you can use the +2 Projectile Helm enchant. For the majority of the damage in this build, much like other bow builds, you actually will want a very high EDPS bow. Since Artillery Ballista is maximized in damage by using a very high EDPS bow, we mimic this in the poison version, due to the fact that poison scales off the hit that inflicts it. Creating a relatively high EDPS bow is fairly simple. You can find many guides on it elsewhere on YouTube, but the basic gist of it is take any of the flat damage essences, which are Hatred, Anger, and Wrath, slam it until you either get all of the flat damage nodes at either T3 or higher, or you can get 2 of them with an open prefix. You can then craft the 3rd prefix, and then you have a likely around 700 or more EDPS bow. If you get lucky and get all of your flat added damage, you can craft attack speed on the suffix instead. Or in the case of my bow, you can roll attack speed on the suffix luckily and just craft the 3rd missing added damage. In my opinion, one of the most common baits of this build is to abandon the bottom half of the tree. This section of the tree is extremely high value due to a few things. One is that there's a lot of very good nodes here that you can easily take without feeling like you're losing too much. In my version of build, where I need the RMR Mastery from the Mana Mastery, I can take the Mana Mastery down here. I can take an easy Frenzy Charge next to the Dual Slot. I can take this node, which gives you flat Ellie Res, as well as some evasion rating and armor, which is good because this build can struggle a little bit on Ellie Res depending on how much budget you have to craft your non-unique pieces. You get flat life, and then you get access to the totem wheel down here, which is arguably the most important part of this section of the tree. Ironwood gives you a ludicrous amount of survivability for your totems. Not underestimate this node. I highly recommend never undoing it. If you use stuff like Essences or Crucible, this thing will prolong the life of your totems drastically, and it is extremely good. Panopticon For obvious reasons, this is a very good node because it gives you +1 Ballista, which directly gives you more damage by a substantial number. Surveillance is really good on single target because when you stack up all of your totems next to the boss or essence or whatever you're trying to kill, you get a flat 7% more damage due to the mods on it. The other reason why this section of the tree is so good is because there's so many relatively good nodes around it, you can actually put a Brutal Restraint down here. And if you can see with my Brutal Restraint, it gives me a ton of good nodes. Percent damage with poison, Aura Effect, attack and cast speed, where the cast speed turns into attack speed due to Wilma's, poison damage, and blind on hit. For these reasons, I highly recommend never abandoning this section of the tree. Some people opt to cut off this section of the tree. You go up towards like Blood Siphon, Entropy, Wasting, as well as other nodes up here, maybe sometimes going into a large cluster jewel and that sort of thing. I would highly advise against it. The other and very important part of the tree, which you can get in two ways, is Eldritch Battery. You can either go up to it directly, which you can do particularly if you're struggling with intelligence, because you get a ton of int from moving up to it directly. The other way you can get it is by using a replica Sorrow of the Divine and amplifying your flask effect. Replica Sorrow of the Divine provides Eldritch Battery during its effect, and because of this, you're pretty much going to required get this thing at 100% uptime if you want to use it reliably as your source of Eldritch Battery. Because this build pretty much fully reserves mana, as you can see on the sidebar. I only have 5 mana remaining. It is so low that POB considers it 0 unreserved mana %. Yeah, there are also variants of this build that use mana reductions and flat mana reduction costs, like the Elrion Veiled mod on your jewelry. You bring it low enough so that you can cast it with your very minimal mana pool, and also make use of things like Mana Forged Arrows, you cast Ensnaring Arrow and Frenzy automatically. While this is convenient and can provide a DPS increase with Ensnaring Arrow and constant Frenzy charge instead of having to self-cast it, it is often kind of finicky to set up, and I didn't opt for it. I didn't really like it. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can try it as well. It's valid. The last thing I want to talk about is my Forbidden Flame. I anoint Nature's Boon here. You can see I like the value of having amplified flasks. It also helps me deal with chaos resistance because my chaos res is quite low. So I have an Amethyst flask that gets amped, as well as my defensive flask and Quicksilver flask for mapping speed. But you can use whatever you want. You can Rapid Onslaught and instead not use the Cluster Duel for Onslaught. You go Avatar of the Chase. This is one of the best nodes for just raw damage. You can go Quartz Infusion if you want to get phasing in a way other than the Watcher's Eye, and also an easy way to cap spell suppression. You can go Endless Munitions to get your +2 projectiles, although I would not recommend doing this unless you're trying to hit +12 projectiles on the perpendicular enchant. Otherwise, this is generally expensive, so I would not recommend going this over alternatives like doing these two nodes or +2 helmet enchant. Gathering Winds is also the last relatively powerful option because it lets you get Tailwind. Tailwind is obviously a great buff, gives you more mapping speed, gives you more damage. Pretty much nothing wrong with it. It's really good. Next, we're just going to quickly go rapid fire through all of the important buffs that you may be wondering about that I can think of off the top of my head. Onslaught, you get it from Sleepless Centuries. Here on the Cluster Jewel, you're pretty much always summoning totems, which means you're pretty much always going to have Onslaught. This is effectively permanent Onslaught, the same as Rapid Assault down there. Phasing, you get from the Watcher's Eye, which gives you phasing while affected by haste. This, when I bought it, was around 1 Divine. It may have gone up now. I don't know. I haven't looked at it recently. If you can, I would also recommend getting a Watcher's Eye with dual mods for Suppress while affected by Graith. This will greatly help cap spell suppression or get it closer to 100% using the Unlucky mod. And speaking of spell suppression, I don't actually cap spell suppression in this build. You can see that I'm taking the chance to cap to suppress spell damage as lucky. This is just softcore things, honestly. You can see that without this node, I have about 86%. If you find this annoying and you really want it, you can switch this. You can switch to the phasing one, which I have down here as well. or you can just save the point. You can take these 2 nodes, which give you 10% more there. If you are not using the Thread of Hope, you can also take these 2 small nodes next to Quick Step, which give another 6%, and so on and stuff like that. You can also craft it on the pieces of gear that are non-uniques, like your boots. Ailment Immunity, I don't personally get it because I haven't felt like I needed it. Even when I wasn't running Brine King for Freeze Immunity, I never really felt in danger from not having it. Ignites don't really pose a problem with Master Surgeon. Shocks have never killed me that I'm aware of yet, because Petrified Blood generally mitigates any large hit that I take, along with Wind Dancer, allowing me to survive pretty heavy hits as long as I don't repeatedly get hit. But if you do, that's probably my own fault. If you want Ailment Immunity, you can get it through either Ancestral Vision, you can see here, which is the spell suppression affecting jewel. You can see here, as long as you are capped on spell suppression, you will also gain 50% ailment immunity, and then you can just use other sources to get your remaining 50% ailment immunity, such as Avatar of the Veil, or other various things like Eldritch Implicits and so on. The other option is Storm Shroud, which is an extremely expensive jewel, but is also very common, where basically all you have to do is cap shock avoidance, which you can easily get on jewels, Eldritch Implicits, and so on. For auras, I run 4 auras. They're all in my bow, linked to Enlighten 3. I run Divergent Herald of Agony. This is very important if you are not taking more poison chance on the tree. This gives you an additional 20% poison hit chance. Petrified Blood, I run Anomalous. You don't need to. That's nothing important. It's just a different distribution of damage taken, which I prefer. Petrified Blood is extremely useful at keeping you alive, particularly to Fizz hits, because as you can see, if you look at the amount of Fizz damage, Fizz mitigation that this gives, there's a pretty substantial amount. You can see that my Fizz max hit goes from 10k all the way down to 7.5k with this on or off. Haste, particularly Vol Haste, is very good. Haste is very powerful with Wilma's Requital. You can see that it gives attack and cast speed, which then just basically fully converts into entirely attack speed. The Vol activation of this skill also gives a massive boost in attack speed, as you might expect, and gives a crazy amount of damage during the buff window. And then Grace is an obvious defensive layer for any ranger. We get a ton of evasion in the ranger area, so I would highly recommend Grace to every single ranger. The last thing I want to touch on are if you are attempting to craft a weapon for this build, instead of just buying a weapon with the poison node and just kind of rolling with whatever it has, the things that you want to look for on this are relatively short in number, so it's pretty simple to find the things that you want. For T5, the 5th column, obviously the only valid thing is the build enabling poison node. The 4th column, you can take something like Against a Poison if you are wanting to put the link in the bow and then move to maybe something like Lightning Coil and have your pseudo 7 link in your bow instead. But as long as you're having it in your Dendra bait, having the socketed gem nodes are basically pointless unless you get the rare Enlighten mod from, I believe is only gotten from Forges. I do not think it can spawn naturally despite it being here. Other than that, I don't recommend getting any aura effect because that messes up your aura a bit unless you feel like dropping Petrified Blood and going from there. Other than that, you're looking for these mods. You're looking for particularly the explicit elemental damage modifier magnitudes. This will drastically buff your LE EDPS by magnifying the flat LE prefixes that we crafted before. The stat nodes are also quite useful because this build can sometimes suffer a bit from stat problems, particularly intelligence. I don't recommend getting the Dex one. The Dex one is kind of bricks the build, not bricks, but it's really negative because it means you get no inherent bonus from dexterity, which means you don't get the accuracy or the bonus evasion. You can get poison duration. This is also an extremely good one because this is just flat DPS increase. Because the longer your poison is, the more poisons you can get during your optimal number, which basically just increases your maximum theoretical DPS. Other than that, there's not too many good T3 or T4 nodes in here. As we can scroll up, there's not many good ones here. AoE is particularly good if you can find it. This node in particular right here with increased AoE and then the reduced AoE if you've killed recently is very good because as a totem build, you as the player do not ever actually kill anything. So if this works the same way as the boot enchants do, you will never proc the negative effect and you will permanently have 40% more AoE. The other extremely good node left is the plus Chaos Dot Multi. If you can mitigate the minus res, which is kind of a pain, it's something I struggle with in my current build, or my current bow. This is an extremely powerful node. I believe this gave me about 17% DPS when I looked at it. That might have changed now, but that's also very good. For T2, which is the second column, these allocates are very good. These allocate notables on the tree. These allocate keystones on the tree. I find a lot of these are very good, although some of them not, like King of the Hill, not particularly useful, but like something like Farsight, if I remember correctly, that was one of the best ones. The keystones, not very useful, honestly, that I could tell. Maybe Leaf Shade. Leaf Shade could be good to help mitigate dot damage. And for other T2s, anything that buffs defensiveness, accuracy rating are okay. They are acceptable. I would not avoid them. They are very good. They're considered good, but they're not amazing. What I consider to be probably the best node you could possibly get, but is extremely expensive and also pretty rare to find, is the minus flat to crit and hits cannot be evaded. This basically means you never need to worry about accuracy, which is honestly insane. Accuracy is one of the more pain things that I deal with on this build. I highly recommend this one if you can get it, but it is extremely expensive. I don't expect many people to get this. Any generic attack speed increase is very good. You don't really need the frenzy charge on kill. You don't really need the onslaught because we have permanent onslaught effectively. Reduced attack speed is extremely bad. I don't ever take reduced attack speed if you can help it. These basic ones are good as well. These two nodes, they rate super increase attack speed with less global damage. Very, 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 very good. I highly recommend these as well. These will not only get you have more poisons in your theoretical max DPS, but it will also make it so your totems get their first hit quicker, which could help you not die. Going up a little bit, crits do not matter. Anything relating to crit does not matter at all. Global damage is meh. Cost of skills doesn't really matter. And then as we move up into the T1 rows, damage over time is okay. Socketed bow gems, socketed discharge gems only matter if you've moved your 6-link to your bow, but even then it's not particularly great. They don't provide a ton of damage, but it's still a damage increase. These damage over times, same as before, they're good. Any flat damage, very good. The higher the flat damage you can get, the better. Effective Withered, also good. I found that the higher flat damage ones for the LE damage flats are better. Maybe I did that wrong, but that's what I found. Something like this one, this very high flat damage lightning. This is extremely high flat damage lightning. This one is also good, but note the survivability hit that you would take from taking this. Just be wary of that. Cold damage with attack speed, very good as well. Just in general, on the first row, aim for as high of flat damage as you can. Attack speed, also very good. Reduced attack speed, bad. Like, I wouldn't recommend getting this one. I would recommend just going for the flat fire damage if you can, with less added, and so on. And that about covers the bow Crucible implicits. And if you're wondering about my own bow, not great. My bow currently has, I believe this is the second highest on this thing. Cold damage cannot chill. That's fine because we don't really do elemental ailments in this build. I have the basic increased stacks with accuracy. This just helps with accuracy. I have the Chaos Dot Multi. This is a very good node. I have Impale Effect because I just kind of had to, because I bought this bow as is. I didn't craft it or anything. I just found this and bought it. This one kind of sucks. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but it is what it is. Everything else is great. And then you have the last node, obviously Poison. Yeah. If you like it, feel free to try out the build. It's an amazing build. It does tons of damage. You can hit dot cap with basically no investment. It's great. Basically, the only thing you need is a 6-link Dendra Bait and a high LE DPS bow. A few divines, maybe. That's it. All right.